When I think about, one of the best investments that we've made, post-World War II, it really has been the aid and development plan. If you think about the history of what we've been able to accomplish in the last 75 years, the Marshall Plan, probably the most successful aid and development plan ever in the history of the world. Rebuilding Japan, stepping up and taking Korea from one of the poorest nations in the world 40 years ago to this remarkable developed economy. And, Acting Administrator, you talked about PEPFAR and the millions of lives that investment has saved. That's a testimony to the real impact of aid and development around the world, but also to the men and women that serve us, our partnering and implementing agencies and NGOs, and I thank them for the work that they do every day. We face this unprecedented challenge, probably the biggest global challenge since World War II in the global pandemic, COVID-19. And Mr. Keating alluded to this a little bit, and Mr. Sherman also talked about the legislation to authorize CEPI that Congressman Yoho and myself have introduced, the SAFE Act, Securing America from Epidemics. We think this is a smart piece of legislation, and authorizing and funding CEPI would be incredibly helpful. We also know the global alliance that's coming together with Gavi and CEPI, and I appreciate your mentioning Gavi in your opening remarks. Part of this is the COVAX pillar, which is part of Gavi's initiative. When we think about it, there's roughly 200 COVID-19 vaccines currently under development around the world. And that's why we need something like this COVAX pillar. We may need more than one vaccine to beat this virus. We don't know which country is going to develop that vaccine, but we do know if we all work together at a global level, if, for instance, the United Kingdom comes up with the successful vaccine for seniors, the United States may come up with one that works better for kids. We've got to all work together. And, I think the President said it, Dr. Fauci said it, and as a physician, I believe that until we find a safe and effective vaccine, manufacture not 300 million doses for the United States, but 6 to 7 billion doses potentially for the world, and then distribute and vaccinate the world, we won't defeat this virus. So, I think that's why it's incredibly important for us to be part of this global alliance with Gavi, with CEPI, et cetera. And, it's kind of this principle of safety in numbers that, we don't know which vaccine is going to work, and we can pool resources from around the world. It doesn't preclude what the administration's doing in terms of bilateral agreements. I believe it's complementary to some of these bilateral agreements with the manufacturers. Acting Administrator Barza, would you share that opinion that it's important for us to be part of this global vaccine coalition, and how best can we engage in this?
Oh, absolutely, I do agree with you. Certainly we're proud of our work with Gavi, and again, for CEPI, we are looking at ways we could potentially partner with them. But one of the things I think it's worth reiterating is vaccines are just one portion of the response. The holistic response to not just this pandemic, but other healthcare emergencies. As again I mentioned before, my belief in the importance of having access to water and sanitation services. So a response to a pandemic, while vaccines are important, the holistic approach that we have at USAID gets to the infrastructure, helping governments respond to the health crises. Oftentimes you'll see a health crisis and it follows a political border, because sometimes there are challenges in terms of governance, a government's ability to provide clean water, clean services, which is why our health accounts being fully integrated with the development portfolio, we feel is the best way to build capacity for governments to strengthen their health systems and response. But we certainly agree with the critical role vaccines have. Should we have a vaccine, that is a portion of it. Access to clean water, any other things also are critical. So proud to have that integrated here in USAID.
Great, and in my remaining time, a few members have brought up the Chinese approach. You brought it up, the economic coercion, et cetera. We'll never have the resources as a single nation to necessarily combat the billions that China is able to do. You touched on multilateral coalitions of like-minded nations, and certainly when I've talked to the EU, our allies in Australia, et cetera, can you maybe give a quick example of some of the multilateral conversations that are taking place with regards to aid and development?
We're certainly, similarly as I mentioned to the DFC, communications between organizations occurs at different levels. Certainly at the staff level, we're coordinating with the EU and others, and I have participated in contact meetings and virtually via Zoom with counterparts in the UK, Canada, and the rest of the development world. So we are discussing at different levels.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have to go to Mr. Yoho.